Hi, I'm JJ Conway, and I help hardworking women and a few good men build financial confidence and take ownership of their financial future. I'm cheering you on with education on financial literacy, smart investments, and passive income streams. Welcome to Ladies of Wealth. We are going to talk about one of my favorite things today, and that is tax sales. And one of the reasons that tax sales is one of my favorite things is because tax sales has a very low entry point to allow you to acquire property for pennies on the dollar. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about the three different types of tax sales and how you can buy property free and clear for as little as $500. All right. All right, I'm so excited. I hope you are too. First of all, yes, you can buy a house or a piece of land for $500 free and clear or less, often more, but or less. The examples I'm going to give you today, each one of those properties ranged in price from $350 all the way up to, I think the most expensive one that is still in my portfolio was $1,800. And some of the ones before that, the most I have spent on a tax sale has been $4,000. Okay, so we're going to talk about those today, and we're going to talk about how you absolutely can buy a house for as little as $500. Now, I don't want to get sued like the guy who used to teach people, 500 free and clear, right? That was his big thing. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's hard to find those gems. So everybody and their brother ain't going to find a $500 house or a $500 piece of land, but you can. Okay, so it just depends on if you're going to do your work and if you're going to do your due diligence and if you're going to actually take the action. We're going to talk about the tax sale trifecta. That's what I call the three types of tax sales. And then we're going to talk also about adjudicated sales, because a lot of times when people talk about tax sales, they think we're talking about adjudicated properties. That's two different things. It's two sides of the same coin, but it's still two different things. All right. We're going to talk about pitfalls you want to avoid and how to protect yourself. And then we're going to talk about an opportunity for you to earn while you learn. I probably should have renamed that because this year we're doing something different. Normally, and I'm just going to put it all out there up front. Normally we do a class. It ranges between $4.99 to $9.99, depending on how many states I'll be investing in that year. And it's a look over your shoulder class. And at the higher price points, you actually can partner with me to invest in properties. And this year, I'm not taking partners. So the class itself is much, much lower this year. It's only $99, and it's basically a look over your shoulder, okay? And so if you're interested in that, get it while you can. If somebody really, really is you took the class last year and you are ready to rumble and you want to actually partner with me, let's have that conversation offline. But I'm not doing that in a class format, and I'll explain more why as we get into tonight's class. This class, like many of the others that we do on real estate, is a fundraiser. However, with the tax class, there is so much information in the slides. I am making it available to you to get a complimentary copy of the slides. So that means it's free 99, baby. You can get yourself a copy of these slides, and you can actually start doing your research today and have profit in your pocket 6 months from now. All right. So I encourage you to do that. Now, I much prefer, I much prefer that you join my coaching course for this content. But I remember being $800,000 in debt, y'all. There was no way I was paying even $25 for your class on real estate investing. Wasn't going to happen. Okay. No, but you can shorten your learning curve. You can do it yourself. You can take the hard way. And sometimes we're in a season of life, the hard way is all we have access to at that moment. But if you want to shorten your learning curve, okay, you can come alongside us and come into our group coaching, and we'll shorten your learning curve. All right. So a little bit about me. I think most people who are on today do know about me, but I just want you to understand that I'm not here to fleece your money. I'll take your money. I love having your money. Every time you buy a course, that lets me know I'm doing a good job, right? But the mission is really for people to have the financial freedom to live their fullest life and their highest calling. I feel that I am called to equip God's people. And if I can equip you to succeed, then that is part of what God has called me to do. And so that's what I'm here for. All right. Okay. So tonight, as usual, I'm going to make you two promises. One, I'm going to teach you skills that you can put into practice tonight. Now, a lot of times I make a comment about how you can put these things into practice tonight and have profit in your pocket by the weekend. But in this case, it does take time to realize your profit with tax sales. So you might be able to make some profit right away, but depending on your jurisdiction, it might be 6 months, it might be a little longer, okay? So that's why I'm saying you can put these things into place tonight. You can begin the research tonight, and there are methodologies to profit quickly, but they're a little nuanced. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So stay tuned and stick around. All right. All right. Okay. The other promise is that I will give you an opportunity to learn more. Usually that is an earn while you learn. And for those of you who are just joining us, I am not offering the earn while you learn opportunity this year. Now, if you are already an accredited investor, your friends and family, you're already on my partner list, well, then in that case, we do have the opportunity for you to partner, but I'm not taking any new members to my partner list at this time. And I'll explain why in a little bit. Okay, this is something you want to do. Make sure you get on the wait list, okay? Because when we open it up, it usually fills up really quick. Tonight's class, unlike most of my others, has a lot of words. If you want the slides, scan the code, or you can go out to jjclink.com/tax slides. Actually, let me put that in the comments. jjclink.com/tax slides, and you can get a free copy of these slides, because it is a lot. And if you're new to this concept, it's a lot to take in. Okay, a lot of times people who grew up like I grew up and people who look like me tend to be on the wrong side of tax sales. We tend to be on the losing your property side of tax sales. Okay, and so this is really hard to comprehend sometimes if it's new to you, but I promise you, this is something that people have been doing since taxes began, and it is something that it's time for us to harness. Okay, too many of us in the past, too many of our aunties and our uncles and our grandparents lost their properties because they couldn't pay their property tax. And I know one thing that I have done, one thing that my business has allowed me to do, is actually buy the tax of properties of people that I know and care for, and give them an opportunity to either redeem the property, pay me out, or restructure their payments, their rent, their loan, or whatever it is that they have, so that we can alleviate some burden. Okay, I'm always going to be about my money. We're not giving out charity here, because charity does not equip God's people. Charity enables God's people, and that's not what I'm called to do. All right. At the same time, though, I think about a family who a big developer was trying to steal their land. And they had a death in the family, and they couldn't pull things together. And so my one friend, she told me about it. She's like, do you think you could add this to your portfolio? I looked at the property. It was a good one. If they didn't ever get their act together and I ended up getting the property, I wasn't going to cry. It had a lake view, and it was 12 acres, and it would have been a nice little property. And by me buying that tax, I now added value to my portfolio, but I also gave them the opportunity to get their family affairs together and prevent the developer who was trying to, y'all, they even created a fire to burn them out of their house and get them off that land. And it was like, no, sir, not on my watch. And I thank the Lord that I was in the position to be able to do that, because that was I think that was the most expensive one I've ever done. And I said 4,000 earlier, but I think this one was like 5,000. Yeah, so that was the most expensive one that I've ever done. But we protected that family and gave them an opportunity to take care of what they needed to take care of with grace and dignity. And then eventually, after about a year and a half, I was redeemed out of the property, and everything went whatever way it needed to go. And so, I don't want to ever imply to anybody who takes one of my classes to allow yourself to be taken advantage of, but you can still make money helping people. And that's why I love teaching what I teach, because you can still make money helping empower people to be a first-time homeowner, empowering people to create their own businesses, coaching people into what they are called to do. I mean, like, it's a win-win-win. Y'all know I love the win-win-wins. All right, the triple wins. Okay, so we're gonna talk through the process. But if you want the slides, if you're like, JJ, this is a lot to understand, this is really new to me, then go ahead and scan the code or go out to jjclink.com/tax slides. All right, so here's the general tax sale process. When people can't or don't, or for whatever reason, somehow they have not paid their property tax, that does not stop the schools from running. That does not stop the cops from getting paid. If they have a locally supported hospital or clinic, it doesn't stop those costs from being accrued to the parish or the county. So whatever jurisdiction, the city, sometimes cities have tax, counties have tax, parishes have tax, everybody's got tax, right? When somebody doesn't pay their property tax and the jurisdiction is counting on that to keep the water, sewer running, and the cops paid and the teachers paid and all that, they still got to find a way to get their money. And the way they do that is by selling that tax to an investor. And what happens in a tax sale is you pay the tax. Now you see in the parentheses there, or more. Now, if you're listening as part of the Ladies of Wealth podcast, I encourage you to go out to the YouTube channel or LinkedIn or Facebook, whichever one you're most comfortable with, at JJ Knows the Way, and actually look at the slides, or you can download them at jjclink.com/tax slides. Okay. If you're listening as a podcast, because we do take these courses and we break them up into the podcast, and we don't give the whole course on the podcast usually, but we do give enough to, let you know you really want the whole course. Okay. So sometimes you pay more than the tax. Sometimes you just pay the tax, but you always at a minimum pay the tax. In some jurisdictions you pay more, but you always at a minimum pay the tax. You as the investor, you pay the tax. So the next door neighbor didn't pay their $500 of property tax. You as the investor, you cover that $500 of property tax. And now the ball is in their court to either redeem you out of it and give you your money back with interest, or you eventually get to proceed to take ownership of the property. They do have that opportunity to redeem. It's different in different jurisdictions. It can be anywhere from 6 months to, 3 years in Louisiana. I heard, and I'm not going to name it because I have not done this research, but I heard from one of my students that their state actually does not have a redemption period. Once it goes to tax sale, you're done. And I'm like, oh, well, that's very juicy. And then they told me what the state was, and I was like, well, it may not be so juicy for me because I like properties I can get to. Okay. If the owner, the original owner of the property, does not redeem the property, then the investor can begin the process to take ownership. What that looks like is dependent on the type of tax sale. So there's 3 types of tax sales. That's why my new book is called the Tax Sale Trifecta. It'll be coming out soon, y'all. So you're gonna get a notice for a pre-order. I hope y'all will help me out on that. Okay. If we can get a bunch of pre-orders, we can get it on that bestseller list. Ooh, that'll be so nice, y'all. It'll be nice for me, and it'll be nice for you too, because you'll be a part of doing something big and helping people take ownership of their life. Look, let me tell you another reason that's really important to me about tax sales. Some of us have a real hard time buying property. Some of us have hard time buying property, and some of us have a hard time renting property for our business, and some of us have a hard time finding property. Some of us have a hard time getting things sold to us, especially depending on where we live. And if you live in a place where it's a little difficult to get your property, well, tax sales, especially if they're done online, can be an opportunity for you to slide on in. Okay. So that's one reason that is very, very precious to me and very important to me to teach these concepts. So there's 3 general types of tax sales. The first one we're going to talk about is a tax lien. That's when you pay the tax. Remember, you always pay the tax. And what you are getting when you pay the tax is you are getting a lien against the property. You are getting a lien against the property. So you know how if you get repair work done and you don't pay that tradesman, then they can turn around and file a trade lien or a mechanic's lien or a plumber's lien or a fill in the blank lien on your property, and you can't sell that property without paying off that lien. It's the same thing with a tax lien. You pay the tax, you now have a lien against the property. If they don't pay for, they don't ever buy you out, they cannot sell their house without paying you off. But guess what most tax sale people want to do? They want the property. So they're going to foreclose on that property and force the sale of the house to satisfy the lien. And that's how they can try to acquire the property. Generally speaking, if there's a mortgage on that property, the bank is going to go ahead and pay it off because they want their money. They don't want to get wiped for $2,500 when they have a $100,000 loan against the property. Okay. Second type of tax sale that you will use is a tax deed. In this case, as a tax deed, you are buying the property, and you have to give them their redemption period. But if they don't redeem it, now you are filing for possession. So the tax lien, you get a lien against the property. You may or may not get it. The tax deed, you are buying the property. If they don't redeem it, you get it. Okay. And now again, tax deed, just like any other tax sale, most of the time the investor gets the money, not the house, not the property. Okay. So we just want to be aware of that. But when you get the property for pennies on the dollar, woo-wee, it feels so good, y'all. Okay, the third type, and as far as I'm aware, the only place I know that does this is Louisiana, and that is a tax certificate. And the way that it works in Louisiana is you are buying a percentage ownership in the property. So all three of these, you are paying the tax. But in Louisiana, you could pay the tax and only get like 4% of the property. Okay. That ownership is yours if they don't redeem. Of course, you will find out later. There's some ups and downs with that. Okay. So again, everybody pays the tax. And then in some states, you pay more when you're doing it, especially in a tax deed state, you're paying a little more for it. And in a tax certificate state like Louisiana, which I think is the only one, I could be wrong. Let me know if I am. It has happened once or twice that I've been wrong in my life, and I accept it. But in Louisiana, you get a percentage ownership. In Maryland, which is a tax lien state, you don't get any ownership. You get a lien. So the amount of ownership depends on what jurisdiction you're in, and it's usually state by state. In Arkansas, they do something a little different. After a year of unpaid taxes, property belongs to the state. They can do whatever they want to do with it. They sell it off. It's kind of like already adjudicated. And we'll talk about what adjudicated properties are in a couple slides. Okay. So now there's different ways there's different structures under which your tax sale allows you to acquire the property. There are also multiple ways that you can profit from the property. Okay. Most of the time, the investor gets the interest. They don't actually get the property. And I think this is why the 500 free and clear guy got, I don't know if that's really what his thing was, but the guy who used to talk about free and clear, because I think that's the real reason he went to jail, is people kept thinking they were going to buy properties, and he didn't make it very clear that you usually don't get the property. You usually don't get the property. I've got some of my portfolio now that have been there for a couple of years, and I've got one where I have a percent ownership of, and I've had it for a couple of years, and I'm on there. If the bank's the other owner, so it's me and the bank, and if the bank doesn't pay the tax, I'm responsible for the tax because I'm one of the owners. So I'm glad they pay the tax. I hope they buy me out soon. But some of the other ones, like I just make money. I make the money, and it goes on my tax. It goes on my self-directed IRA. So I'm not going to pay tax on that money that I make because it's all tax-free. It's a Roth IRA. It's tax-free. The earnings are tax-free. And so I really am looking forward to that. Like, there's not a whole lot of things I'm looking forward to about getting older, but getting my tax-free money, I'm looking forward to that. So, okay. Most of the time, the investor gets the interest from their paying off the tax. They get interest and fees, and each interest rate and stuff is dependent on the jurisdiction. Sometimes the investor does get the property. Okay. And so if you really want the property, there's tactics and techniques that you do to maximize your chance that this one is the one you're going to actually acquire the property for. Now, this kind of a public class that is general in nature I'm not really at liberty to dig into all of those strategies and tips on this kind of a class because it's very specific for each jurisdiction, and I don't want to get sued. Point blank. Okay. So if you are interested in that, I encourage you to take the online class with the coaching package. There's 2 price points. You can just get the class, or you can also get the class with the group coaching. And in the group coaching, we can work on your specific situation, do case analysis, look at the numbers. What are your exit strategies? We do all of that, but I can't do all of that in a generic public class. Okay. Not trying to lose any licenses here. All right. All right. Occasionally, you can sell your interest in the property to another party. I've seen that before. I've seen so many times where a new investor who did not get into a coaching program, who did not connect with someone who does tax sales at their local RIA, went and bought tax sales without researching, and then they ended up with a dog of a property. And the next thing you know, they are trying to sell their interest in that property to somebody like me who looks at the property and says, there's no profit here. That's not always the case, but it has often been the case. So you might be able to do that. But chances are, if there were a lot of upside to that, you probably could keep the property and make the profit yourself anyway. And again, in our group coaching, we can help you analyze all of that. Each jurisdiction has a different rate of return. And your rate of return really matters. The higher the rate of return, the more money you get back on your investment. And we don't really stop to think about it sometimes. We don't realize how the nature of compound interest causes an exponential acceleration of our money. And so we think it's kind of like a straight line. You know, if I double my money in, I double my money out. And it doesn't work that way when you're investing at interest rates that compound. And real estate is one of those investments that can compound. Okay. The other big thing that matters is your redemption time. Okay. So you see the different times here for different types of liens, and one types of liens or deeds. That says Texas tax lien, but that should say tax deed. Man, where did I get this chart from? They did not do a good job. Okay, I'm going to have to make my own chart. You know, I'm realizing I'm just going to have to start doing that with a lot of my stuff. The rate of return is important. Your redemption time is also important. So in Louisiana, if they don't redeem for 3 years, you make 41%. And I have had properties go to 2 years and 11 months. Y'all, 2 years and 11 months. Like, I was so excited. I was going to get this property because they were not going to redeem it next month. And I was going to file for the title and it was going to be mine. And they redeemed it. I was like, but it's 41%. And I made 41%. I really wanted the property, but I made 41%. Okay. And so that's a really high interest rate. But check this out. There might be another jurisdiction that has a 12% return on your investment, but they only have a 1 year right of redemption. So you could buy tax sales 3 years and get 36% interest if you're rehashing the same money. Okay. Or you might go into another county that has a 24% interest rate, but they only have an 18-month right of redemption, okay? So when you look at that and you average out the totals, you find that that big, long Louisiana 41% that looks so juicy, it may not be so juicy, because if you average it out, it's 13, almost 14% per year. Why am I sharing you this when I know that people don't like math, huh? Why am I sharing this with you? I'm sharing this with you because sometimes people look over here and they feel like they can't make money in their backyard. And I'm showing you this to let you know you can make money just about anywhere. If you apply these principles, you can make money just about anywhere. And you might find that this place over here offers a higher interest rate, but their terms may be lower. Or this place offers a shorter period of redemption, but you might have less profit by the time all the dust settles, okay? And so that's why I'm sharing with you this chart. Don't just make, this is a mistake that a lot of new tax sale investors make, is they look strictly at the rate of return and they charge in without considering the redemption period, okay? That 3 years in Louisiana, 3 years is a long time. And you still got to pay the tax when you own that property, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to actually buy in the sale. And the sale is going to be different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. A lot of sales are moving online. So in Texas, there are several in the online portal. And it's a different portal than we used in Louisiana. In Louisiana, we used Civic Source, and a lot of states have gone to Civic Source, but some states do their own thing. Maryland also has an online portal that you can do the tax sales online in. And so you just want to really kind of get familiar with the jurisdiction you're in. And one of the reasons we're doing this class today in April, we were actually supposed to do it in March, but then it was spring break and life happened and I couldn't get the class to work. And so, excuse me. And we also had our women's wealth thing, and I was going to teach it during the women's wealth thing, whatever. The reason we're doing this now is so that you can get your ducks in a row to actually participate, because a lot of these tax sales are in May and June. And so you want to get your funds together. You want to get all your stuff together now so that you can participate in the sale. If you're listening to us, I'm part of the podcast today. We record these live every Thursday, but real estate is every third Thursday. And so every first Thursday is Q&A. Second Thursday is 7-figure business building, how to create multiple streams of income. Third Thursday is real estate investing. Fourth Thursday is the empowered entrepreneur, how to become the person who can be, do, and have the things that you want out of life. And so with that lineup, it's a fantastic Thursday night class. And I hope that you will join me on the next one. That's all I've got for you today. I'm JJ Conway. Thank you so much for watching, or if you're listening, thank you for listening on the podcast. Y'all take care and be blessed. Don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and ask your question at ladiesofwealth.com.